You're listening to the IB4E Coaching Podcast.
Brought to you by IB4E Coaching, business coaching for executives, entrepreneurs, and small business professionals. Learn more at ib4e-coaching.com.
Hey, Coach Harlan here. Welcome back to the podcast. Hope you guys are having an outstanding week. I'm having a great week, and I'm excited to introduce you to my guest today. Please help me welcome Charles Feltman. Charles Feltman is the founder of Insight Coaching, providing coaching, consulting, and leadership development programs and trust-building workshops. Charles holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of California, Santa Cruz, and a master's in organizational development from the University of Southern California. He is a certified in the Leadership Circle Profile, Myers-Briggs DISC, and the Triscendance Trust Assessment for leaders and teams. He's also a certified husband, father, and grandfather. Charles is the author of The Thin Book of Trust, where he talks about how leaders can cultivate trust in their organizations. His work has helped countless professionals understand the mechanics of trust and how to build it intentionally. Charles, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Harlan. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Enjoying the book. Thank you so much for sending a copy of your book over. I'm enjoying that. In the book, so you talk about building trust, both professional and personal relationships. You define trust as the willingness to make something valuable, vulnerable to another person's actions. Can you explain that a little more?
Yeah, let me just expand it a little bit. So it's really a choice. It's choosing to make something you value vulnerable to another person's actions. So it's not your typical, if I were to ask a group of people in a room, how would you define trust? They would be somewhat specific. It's keeping confidences, it's meeting your commitments, it's walking your talk, all those kinds of things. This is more sort of this transcends all of those and includes all of those in that sense. It's a way of thinking about trust as making yourself vulnerable by choice, which we do when we trust someone. And in doing so, we're taking a risk. So it's setting up this idea that choosing to trust someone is choosing to put yourself at risk to some degree. And then thinking from there, of course, how do we make that risk assessment? How do we decide that okay, I think I can make this choice. I can choose to trust this person because I think they're trustworthy. Or maybe not so much.
Or not so much, right. And I know you go into kind of whether it's consciously or subconsciously, the 4 steps we kind of go through to decide or determine whether we're going to trust someone. So yeah, I want to go into that in just a minute. There's so much to talk about. I hope we can get through everything because I've got a lot of questions for you. But before we get started, I've got 10 questions that I'd like to ask each one of my guests. Now, listeners know these are the questions made famous on the TV show Inside the Actor's Studio, where the host James Lipton asks these same questions of his Hollywood guests from TV, film, and stage. And I figure if they're good enough for the Hollywood elite, they're certainly good enough for my guests. So, Charles, if you're ready, I've got 10 questions for you, sir.
We'll see if I'm up to the Hollywood elite here. I don't know.
You'll make it, no problem.
I should have had another cup of coffee before. That's one of them. Yeah, anyway. Go for it.
All right. Go for it. All right. What is your favorite word?
That's a tough question because I have lots of favorite words, which I use a lot. But I guess if I had to choose one right now, it is it's cooperation.
Okay. What is your least favorite word?
My least favorite word. Oh boy. There are lots of those too. Let's see. My least favorite word, I guess, would be right now anyway. Oh gosh, there are all sorts of them. I may have to pass on this one.
We can circle back.
Yeah, maybe so.
All right, we'll circle back to that one. What turns you on?
Oh, what turns me on is people who are passionate about what they do, what's important to them, people who have clear values and live by them, um, people who are uh, playful and fun. Yeah, those things definitely turns me on.
Nice. Very cool. All right. What turns you off?
Uh, when someone is closed-minded, unwilling to consider other possibilities.
What sound or noise do you love?
Oh boy, lots of those too. I think probably my favorite is the sound of running water, as in a stream or a creek. Water,
Nice.
sort of flowing over rocks and down through rills and between logs and that kind of thing. Yeah, I love that sound.
Nice. And what sound or noise do you hate?
Uh, okay, well, one that I find annoying on a regular Thursday morning, every Thursday morning when I'm walking my dog, is the sound of the garbage trucks coming by, and it's an inevitable. We're walking along and everything's fine, and then I turn a corner and the garbage truck is going right down the street I need to walk down to get back home, and it's moving at the same speed I am and stopping every few feet.
I'm with you. Okay. Question 7. What is your favorite curse word?
Well, the one I use, I don't curse a lot, to be honest with you. It doesn't, I kind of grew up not doing that. But if I do, it's usually one that starts with F and ends in K, and a lot of people know it. And
A
it's a
lot of people
really,
know it.
it's pretty versatile. It can be used in a lot of different circumstances.
Yep. Very much. All right. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh, well, there's a profession I'd love to attempt, but I'm so underqualified for it that there's no one in that profession that would have me, and that is some form of making music, singing or playing an instrument. I would absolutely love to do that, but I can't do it. So that one is not a viable profession for me in any way, shape, or form. If there's another one though that I possibly could do, it might be acting.
Nice. Very cool. All right. What profession would you not like to do?
Politics, which I guess is a form of acting, but no,
Definitely.
I don't think I want to go. I don't think would want to go there.
No.
I don't mind in public service, but not in the form of politics.
Before we get to the final question, circle back. What is your least favorite word?
Politics.
Okay. Very cool.
We'll go there for today.
All right. And the final, Charles, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Um, you're going to have a lot of fun here.
Nice. Very cool. All right, Charles, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I want to talk more about your book. I want to talk about Insight Consulting, some of the folks you're working with, how you help them, what they're struggling with at the time. And at some point, we'll transition into courage and leadership. Okay. So, listeners, we'll be talking about all that and more right after this. So, stick with us. And I'm back. My guest, Charles Feltman. Charles, thanks again for taking time out to chat with us. Trust. Uh, Trust is, it seems like an intangible, right? Or I guess it almost is just an intangible. How do you define trust in a way that makes it actionable for leaders?
Well, again, going back to that definition that we talked about earlier, it's a risk assessment that we make, and we may make it consciously or unconsciously. And my preference for people would be that they make it consciously. And so, one way to think about trust then is I take this sort of intangible, somewhat ambiguous uh, word, trust, and break it down into four different domains, if you will, that lead then directly to behaviors that either build or damage trust in those four different domains. But before I even go there, I just want to say one thing that a lot of people find uh, valuable in terms of trust, and that is that trust is not binary. It's not like an on-off switch. Like either I trust you 100% or I don't trust you at all. Um, there are there are different circumstances under which we trust people differently. Um, you know, I um, I would hope that my wife trusts me to be honest with her, to support her and help her around the house and help her work through different things. But she should in no way, shape, or form trust me to work on our car, for example. So there's different circumstances under which we trust
Sure.
each other. And so um, to write someone off because they've done one thing in one circumstance or situation that we find untrustworthy uh, really is kind of a waste of energy and time. And, it's like not useful,
Yeah.
really. So how do you figure it out? How do you figure out how I trust this person in some ways and not others? And so the four trust assessment domains, I call them, because we're making risk assessments, right, around trust and trusting someone. So there are four of them. One is what I call care, the domain of care, and that is um, I trust that you or whoever I'm thinking about has my interests in mind as well as their own, of course, but has my interests in mind. They intend good for me. They are supportive of me. Um, so, for example, if I'm thinking about my boss, I know my boss, I believe, I trust my boss is going to support my interests when he or she is talking with other people at their level or their bosses or whatever. They're not going to undermine me. They're not going to undermine me with with my peers either. Just the opposite. They're going to, build me up where it's appropriate. So that's one domain. Another domain is sincerity, which is kind of a combination of integrity and honesty. That is, I trust that when you say something, I can believe it. That you're not intentionally trying to mislead me. You're not having a different conversation in your head than the one you're having with me out loud, so that I don't have to worry. Gosh, is this person misleading me in some way? Are they lying to me? I don't have to worry about that. I trust that you're going to be honest with me, as the extent that you can. You may not actually know, but at least you've done some due diligence before you tell me something. And also that you act with integrity. That is, the words that come out of your mouth are supported by your actions. So if you say to me, hey, I want your feedback, and I give you my feedback, you're going to accept it. You may not like it, but you're going to accept it. You're going to listen to me. Uh, so integrity and honesty. So that's the domain of sincerity. The domain of reliability is that you will keep the specific commitments or promises that you make. If you say that you're going to have the entire report to me on Thursday afternoon by 4 o'clock, it's there and it's done in a way that we've agreed to. So, you may have requested that I do it in a particular format, and it's going to be in that format,
Nice.
unless we've changed our minds somewhere along the way. So, in other words, I can trust that you will get something to me as you've promised, or as you've offered and I've accepted. Or if you can't, that you will let me know in as much time as possible ahead of the due date so that we can sort of figure out what else to do to save the situation. So that's reliability. And reliability relies heavily on making clear and complete requests and offers. And in response to the requests, making solid commitments to each other, clear commitments, so we both know what we're committing to and that our commitments are doable. And then finally, there's the domain of competence. So that's simply, I trust that you have the experience, expertise, knowledge, resources, perhaps, to do what it is that I'm asking you to do or that you're telling me you can do. So, and the domain of competence relies, making trust assessments in the domain of competence relies heavily on shared standards. So,
Mhm.
making sure that you and I are operating off the same set of standards so that when I make an assessment about your competence, it's matching how you're assessing your own competence.
Nice.
So, and we can make an assessment, a positive assessment of trust in some domains, but also a distrust, an assessment of distrust. I can't trust you in this domain. I can't trust you to always meet those commitments that you make. And that may be because you're way overworked. But yeah, I can't trust that you'll always do that for whatever reason. And so, how do we deal with that? Do we have a conversation about changing your workload? Do we have a conversation about how you might approach your work differently? Do we have a conversation about what I'm asking for, and so on?
Nice. Yeah. So I like that because I can as you're picturing it, I'm seeing this in my mind that I do go through similar steps to, is this person reliable? If they say they're going to be someplace, are they there? If they say they can help me with this, are they there? Are they competent? Am I going to let them work on my car? Do I have, the confidence that they are competent to do that? So care, sincerity, reliability, and competence. Which of these do you think leaders struggle with the most?
It's interesting. Well, I think everybody struggles with reliability because we have this um, cultural norm that everybody, that we got to work, 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 and it just constantly, we don't have time to even think about. If somebody comes to me for, asks me to do something, I barely have time to think it through and give them an honest reply or response. Can I do this? Not the way you're asking it. I can't do it in the time frame you're asking for. Instead, I just go, sure. And then I miss the commitment or I miss some other commitment because I'm doing that one. So everybody struggles with that. Outside of that, the one that I find interestingly, I find leaders ask me about how do I demonstrate that is care. How do I demonstrate to the people, my direct reports, the people who work for me, that I do have their interests in mind, that that I do intend good for them, because that's an important, very important assessment on people's parts. As a leader, I would want the people I lead to trust that I do care, that I do have their intend good for them. I have their best interests in mind. But leaders are not quite sure how to do that quite often. So, okay, let's talk about that. Let's think about it. How can you, turn it around? What do you see as signs that your leader or your peers or whoever um, care about you in that way?
And so what do you come up with? I mean, what should you
Oh,
look for? Now, I mean, I have an idea. My wife showed me this a long time ago. You're in a restaurant and you order your food. The food comes to the table, and a couple minutes later, a manager comes walking by and says, "How is everything over here?" And she
yes.
says, "Stop and look at their feet. If their feet are pointed at the table, they're facing you. Then they really care what your response is going to be. If their feet are angled up the aisle, then they're just doing a drive-by. It's a checkoff. I'm supposed to ask you, I've asked, and I'm gone. And they just keep on moving as they go. So I'm thinking the same way, if you're working with your employees, if you actually stop to talk to them, stop and be there, in that moment, face them, mean it, be sincere about it, right? All the other things you said. I think to me, that shows that you actually do care what my response is. You're not just doing a
Absolutely.
drive-by, you're not just checking off a box so HR is happy. You're actually taking time out to ask me and actually listening to what I say.
Absolutely. And that's interesting that you said taking time out. Actually, you're taking time in.
Yeah,
It's part of your job, is to build trust with the people who work for you and with you. So yeah, it's an important part of what you do, and doing that and doing it well. So yes, I would agree with what you're. It's great. Actually, that's a great story. That what your wife said is quite so.
She's brilliant,
Other
and I have all the I have directive to say so. Yes, she is brilliant. Absolutely.
It's a good observation. So other things, one of them that a lot of leaders don't do, don't even think about doing, is really helping their employees um, develop professionally. Just sort of, just, hey, you're working for me, so do the work. But the leaders who sit down with their employees and say, okay, where do you want to be in 2 years, 5 years? Let's make a plan and help you execute on that plan. Um, so that's one thing that really goes a long way. Another one is simply listening. So I have, I've talked to so many leaders so no matter what level they're at, but even pretty high up leaders who tell me, oh yeah, I go into my boss's office for a one-on-one, and we have a half an hour, and I have 5 or 6 things that I really need to get responses from my boss. My boss starts off, talks for 25 minutes at me, and then gives me 5 minutes to ask about these, 5 or 7 things that I really need to get answers on in order to do my job well. That does not build trust in the sense of in the domain of care. Um, Flip that around. Listen more, talk less as a leader, particularly. And as you said, be present, not be on phone, not be looking at the computer, not be shuffling papers. Actually be present with the person you're talking
I
with.
actually worked with a manager who would come around his desk and sit in the chair next to you to talk.
Yeah,
So you don't have that separation. It's like I want to
yeah.
be right there. And I always appreciated that. The cost of distrust. At How does distrust lead to like workplace inefficiencies and conflict and eventually disengaged employees? I mean, I know disengaged employees, there's a huge cost to businesses for that. So how does that cost of distrust come in?
Think about it. When you don't trust someone, what do you do? What are the things that you actually do when you're around that person or have to interact with that person, or even interact with people who are interacting with that person? What do you do?
Like, I don't share. I'll keep things to myself, right?
Yep.
Avoid them if possible.
Yep. Yeah. We avoid. We don't risk putting anything out there that they could harm in some way. Back to that vulnerability thing, something I value that they might harm, so I'm not going to trust them. So now thinking about that, just those 2 things, avoid that person, and when you do have to interact with that person, don't give them any information that you don't absolutely have to. So what's that going to do as teams try and work together, as people try and work together? Just those 2 things are going to slow everything way down.
Yeah, I was saying don't give them anything that they could weaponize against you,
Right.
because I've worked with people like that. It's like, I don't want to share any of this with you. I'll
Right.
answer your question. And that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And trust is a two-way street, and so is distrust. So trust is built when I trust you a little bit and you meet my trusting appropriately, and then you trust me a little bit, and we build that over time going forward. But distrust also goes two ways. So, you don't trust somebody, and they're going to observe your behavior in response to
Yeah.
distrusting them. And it's going to look very untrustworthy to them. So they're going to pull back and do the same, behave in the same ways towards you. Everything breaks down. It spirals down really quickly.
Yeah. So how can someone in a leadership position start the process of repairing that broken trust? Does it just take time? Are there certain efforts they need to make as far as rebuilding the trust with those people?
So, well, it's different circumstances require different approaches. I would say it's not like there's no one size fits all. Here's the patch that'll cover all all holes in trust. But rather, it really depends. The It's incumbent on somebody to make the first move.
Okay.
And you're talking about leaders. If it's leaders in a situation where that leader doesn't trust someone that they are working with, first they need to understand for themselves really what is the behavior that they're finding untrustworthy. And then thinking about what trust domain that behavior lies in. Is it do I assess that that person's not being honest with me? Or is it simply a matter of reliability? They're not meeting their commitments. Those are two very different kinds of conversations, for example.
Okay.
So I'm ultimately having a conversation about it in a way that um, does not create walls, does not um, uh, engender the other person putting on their armor, but rather maybe taking a little bit of it off. Um, Part of it is we're on the same team, really helping the other person understand, we're on the same team. We need to have each other's backs. How's this going to work unless we trust each other? So, do you agree? Do you want to also build trust here? Okay, so let's talk about this. So it's a series of conversations, perhaps over time. If it's a team and the team doesn't trust each other, people on the team don't trust each other, again, the leader needs to step in and demonstrate trustworthy behavior. And it's useful to understand what might be going on here, what domain or domains might be uh, damage occurring in, and then address those domains with those people. Figure out, okay, so gosh, let's see, so and so over here, Ron over here doesn't trust Amy. Um, Thinks that Amy is trying to sabotage the team's work by not sharing information. Well, Amy's not sharing information because she believes that Ron has taken, you know, taken her thinking and claimed it for himself.
Right.
And so as the leader, understanding what's going on here, is it understanding Amy's position and Ron's position, and then helping them shift a little bit and they may not ever really trust each other 100%, but loosen them from that tight adherence to their positions and their beliefs about each other, and introduce the possibility that that may not be exactly how it's, what it is or how it's happening. Sorry,
And
I'm
you
kind
work
of,
with individuals, right? Professional
I do.
and their teams also. Do those team building type exercises, do they work where you get everybody off site and do something to try to help build the camaraderie? Does that help build trust?
It can. I'm not a real, I don't use team building exercises per se. What I do is offer people. So what I found is in terms of building trust specifically, it's when a team or a group of people has a shared language and a shared framework, then they can have useful conversations towards building stronger trust or repairing trust that's been damaged. And so when I work with teams or groups of leaders, for example, I start out sharing the framework, the language that I use, and then set up exercises where they get to try it out and use it. And the end of the day is that the last thing that I want them to leave with is some specific action items that things they're going to go do. Starting small, they're not going to suddenly change everything, but what's that one or two things you can do that's going to move the dial, even just a little bit, and then go back and practice that.
Are there common mistakes that you see that people make that erode the trust without them really knowing it?
Yeah, I think we all do that. That's one of the values of um, understanding what builds trust and what can damage it in each of the trust domains. So conversation around, here are the 5 things on this team that build trust in the domain of care and build trust in the domain of sincerity and reliability and competence. So these are the things that we're going to strive to do, the ways that we're going to try to behave with each other. And these we also recognize are 4 or 5 things that really can damage trust. And so we're going to also strive to not do those things. And just naming them helps because, as you were just saying, it's unconscious sometimes. We just do what we're doing. We're doing ourselves, and ourselves often is quite good, and sometimes it's really counterproductive. And so naming those 4 or 5 things that we know have damaged trust in the past and can continue to damage trust. And then I'm a team member and I'm thinking about a particular behavior that I have and going, oh, you know what? That's one of those things. Okay, I'm going to try something different here. So as a leader, then the leader's job is to lead, is to model those positive trust building behaviors and not model the trust damaging behaviors, but also have conversations about being able to call each other out on that in a way that doesn't shame somebody, but simply says, hey, we all agreed we're not going to do those things. So let's move forward and not do them.
Accountability, sure. Do you have a real world example of a leader that successfully was able to rebuild trust, maybe that they lost with their team?
I do. I have a few. One leader who he didn't lost trust, but a couple of his team members um, were not didn't actually let me no, I'm going to go to a different one. Okay. Because I think this happens somewhat often. A team leader who was conflict averse and liked to keep the harmony. And I tell this story actually in the Thin Book of Trust. But this particular leader would talk to different members of his team about, they each would have maybe different ideas about how something that the whole group should be doing or is going to do or whatever. And they would come to him one at a time and press their own ideas on him. And he, in order to kind of keep the harmony, would speak to them in a way that sounded to them like he was agreeing with them. And so they'd go back and think, oh, yeah, we're going to go forward this way. And then at some point, often he didn't even announce his decision about the way they were going to. He'd just start acting on it. But eventually it'd become clear that he'd chosen a particular path, and somebody was the winner and other people were the losers. And they just came to totally distrust him. They thought he was acting in secret, acting not in their best interest, lying to them, and so on. And so once he, with the help of a coach, realized this, understood what he was doing and the impact it was having, he one of the first things he did was actually go on a kind of an apology tour and say, okay, I get it. I see what I've been doing. This is not helpful. I'm committing myself right now to doing something different. I want your help. I want you to call me out on it. If it seems like I'm doing what I've always done, let me know. And it was a hard thing for him to do. It took a lot of courage because he was such a, kind of get along guy, go along to get along guy. That this was it took a lot of. It wasn't like he did it right away. We worked. He had to work with his coach to prepare himself to do something very different in the world. Once he got to the point where he felt like he could, that's when he went on this apology tour and started actually behaving differently. And that rebuilt the trust that the team had in him over, and it took a while. It wasn't like it was going to happen overnight. They'd spent a lot of time dealing with the old version of him. And it took them a while to take away that old picture, if you will, and see how he was now.
Yeah.
But it did happen.
Nice. Yeah, that takes courage to step out and say, I made a mistake. I've been doing this wrong, and hold me accountable.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yes. So yeah, it's possible. It's doable. It takes really wanting to do it well and recognizing that you have to retool yourself from the inside out.
Yeah, and commit to that. Yeah,
Yes.
very good. So speaking about courage and leadership, we talk a lot on the show about the courage. Where did you find the courage to do this? Where did you find the courage to walk away from your 9 to 5 job to create your own success, write the book, things like that? Where do you find your courage? Where did you find the courage to write the book you have and actually go out and start doing this work with trust and leaders? Where did that come from?
I mean, it came from recognizing that a lot of people, a lot of my clients were suffering. They were suffering the same way I did when I was a leader in organizations and led teams, led initiatives. That I was not necessarily great at building trust, and I was flailing around. I didn't know. I didn't have any idea how to do it. It just either happened or it didn't. So I left it in a large measure up to chance, and pretty much everybody else around me was doing that. Some people were better at it. Some people were worse at it than me. Um, and as I began to work as a coach, I saw this happening for my clients, and I didn't have much that I could offer them. And then I learned this framework, or the framework, actually, it was 3 assessment domains when I first learned it, and I added the 4th one, the domain of care, to it and started using it with my clients and found that it really helped them. And so it wasn't so much a matter of courage, I guess, as just listening to what was needed out there. And then a publisher, small publishing company called Thin Book Publishing, which published books for the business, thin books for the business market, contacted me and asked me if I would be willing to write a thin book on trust and building trust at work. And I said, yeah, yes, I will do that. So the thing that actually is still takes courage for me is getting up in front of a bunch of people and and really talking about this stuff and talking about it in a way that's clear, concise, and compelling.
Mhm.
Really putting my energy out there and into it. I believe in it. I believe it, and I'm good with working with small teams or even bigger teams and leaders. And so the courage part is actually getting out in front of large groups of people and
Sure.
lighting them up about it.
Nice. Yeah, and we talk about different types of courage that leaders have to tap into, right? There's the emotional courage, empathetic courage, disciplined courage, doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done, social courage, saying what needs to be said, even if it's unpopular, intellectual courage, the courage to say I don't know or I was wrong. Um, is there a type of courage you think is most important for leaders or those in a leadership role?
I think all of those are important for leaders. I think, though, given again our current business and leadership culture, the courage to say I was wrong is something that few leaders do.
Yeah.
They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to even acknowledge themselves that they were wrong in many cases. And so the courage to, first of all, acknowledge to themselves, oh, I messed up. I did this wrong. Or I could do it better, even simply. I could do it better.
Mm.
But definitely I did this wrong. And then turn around and go out and say that to the people to whom it matters. Uh, that's something that takes a tremendous amount of courage, I think, because we are so unused to doing it. We do not have a practice of acknowledging, you know what, I messed up. Or, you know what, I don't know all the answers. That's a big one. I don't
It's a
know
big
this.
one.
As a leader, I imagine I'm supposed to know,
Hmm.
which means I can't learn, right? I
Yeah,
can't learn anything new if I think I'm supposed to have all the answers already. So yeah, the courage to acknowledge to myself and others, I don't know all the answers. I don't have it all figured out, and I made a mistake. Yeah,
that's tough. Yeah, a lot of leaders think they have to be the smartest person in the room. So they don't want to admit that they don't know, or they don't want to admit that their idea was wrong, or it's tough.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, they have, in fact, yeah, they have to come up with the ideas in the first place. Um, yeah.
Speaking of leaders, what do you look for in a leader?
You mean if I'm looking for someone to lead me, or if I'm looking for
Yeah.
someone, if I'm looking at leaders that I'm working with,
I was a
or
consultant, so a lot of times we would go into a business, and a leader isn't necessarily the person in the big corner office. The leader could be somebody within the team, but people look to that person and say, "Wow, this is somebody who I trust, somebody that I will follow their lead." What do you look for? How do you determine who the leader is?
so there's positional leadership, right? And then there is thought leadership, someone whose thinking everyone respects. So I look for the people who are thought leaders, which requires two things. It requires being able to think well about things, being able to analyze, being able to communicate those thoughts well. Well, that's the other thing is having the thoughts and then communicating them in a way that other people can hear. Um, I worked with engineers a long time ago had brilliant ideas, but they were terrible at communicating those ideas, and so they were not leaders. Um, I look for humility, this idea that I'm not the smartest person in the room. I need these other people's thinking, people who can invite that thinking. um, into the room, into the conversation. Um, People who are, again, courageous enough to recognize that it takes a whole team, it takes a whole group of people, sometimes a whole company's worth of people to meet a new challenge. Um, and I think also people who uh, respect other people, the people that who work for them, that recognize that we're all valid human beings, even though we may not all have the same capacities. We're all valid human beings. So I will listen to what you say and I will consider it. I may not act on it, but I will certainly listen and consider. So people who are willing to do that is, I think, really key to good leadership. And of course, trustworthiness, being able to not just, and what I think is important in leadership is not just to be able to build trust one-on-one with other people, but to create conditions on the team or in the group where other people can build trust with each other and maintain that trust and repair it if necessary.
Nice. Very cool. And if I was to bump into any of your uh, either, I don't know if you have any employees right now or are you solopreneur right now?
I do have associates that I,
Okay,
work with when I've got a bigger project than something that I can do alone. So yes.
got it. So if I was to bump into any of your associates or any past employees or people you used to work with, colleagues in the past, and ask them about your leadership style, what would they tell me? What kind of leader are you?
That's a really good question. I just had this conversation with one of my associates.
Nice.
And I think my leadership style tends to be kind of servant leadership a little bit. My intention is to remove roadblocks for other
Mhm.
people as opposed to giving them, when when it's necessary, obviously, I want if something needs to happen really fast,
Mhm.
I can kind of take charge in that respect. I don't like to do that, and I don't do it necessarily well. But when the challenge is larger and the time frame is long enough, I really like to lead in the sense from creating a team of people who are empowered to do what needs to be done, and have the resources to do that. And my job mainly is to remove roadblocks, whether those roadblocks are external or internal, because sometimes the roadblocks are internal and internal within the
Absolutely.
team, internal within an individual, including me as the leader. So, yeah, I guess that's how I would describe it. I describe my leadership.
Good job.
When I put together for example, when I put together a team to deliver a large leadership development program, which is going to last over 3 or 4 days and have follow-on coaching or whatever. So I'm leading a team of people who are going to, over this period of time, deliver this workshop, which has a lot of moving parts and so on and so forth. Um, that's exactly how I do it, what I just described.
Yeah. Very nice. I like leaders like that, that it's like, there's the goal. How can I help you achieve that? Right?
Yeah.
What
And
can I
lots of
do to remove the
validation when
barriers?
things are, yeah, lots of validation too. When people are doing it the way that it makes it work well, yeah, call attention to that.
Nice. Very cool. So what's on the horizon? What's next for you?
What's
Any,
next for me?
yeah. Do you have any fun things coming up? Any programs you'd like to talk about?
Yes, well, a couple. One in particular, I do twice a year, I do a Trust at Work certification program where people go to the program, they get certified in using the tools, the framework and language and teaching it to other people or coaching people with using that, using that. So it's I find a mix of people. I have coaches, consultants, facilitators. I have HR professionals, learning and development professionals, OD professionals, all, come through the program. It's 5 weeks, once a week, a live virtual session, and then there's work between sessions. So that's coming up in the fall. You can find out about that on my website, which, by the way, is www.insightcoaching, all one word.com.
Perfect.
So yeah, that's probably the thing that's coming up that I'm most excited about. I just it wasn't that long ago that I finished the last one. I'm really enjoying still having, keeping in contact with some of the people who are in the program. And yeah, that one's a big one. And then I'm going
Very
to be
cool.
doing some lead ups to that, some free webinars and so on. So
Okay. Very cool. And all that information is on your website.
yes,
Very good. Um, so yeah, that's perfect. I will have that link down in the show notes. Can people connect with you on LinkedIn? Are you active on LinkedIn?
I am active on LinkedIn. Yes, they can. I have
Okay.
a profile, and I do actually post on a fairly regular basis. Although, for the past couple of weeks, I haven't posted anything because I've been busy doing other stuff, and I'm also in transition in terms of someone who's doing my marketing with me and for
Okay.
me. So the person who's giving me topics to work on and so on. So um,
Nice.
I'm going to start up again fairly soon. Oh, and one more thing. I do want to also, if I may,
Sure.
promote my podcast, which I
Okay.
do in conjunction with another individual, Ela Edgar. So we have this podcast called Trust on Purpose,
Nice.
which, as you can imagine, is sort of the opposite of trust by accident.
Right.
We're talking about trust from all sorts of different perspectives. We occasionally have wonderful guests that come on and add a lot to the conversation, or it's just a conversation between Ela and I about something around trust that we've encountered or matters to us. So that's out there, and we drop a new episode every 2 weeks, and you can
Nice.
find out about that on any place where you find podcasts. Just Trust
Perfect.
on Purpose.
Trust on purpose. All right. I will add that to the show notes. That's perfect. And a copy of your book, can they get that off the website or is that available on Amazon,
It's
Barnes and Noble?
available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can go into any independent bookshop and order it. It's called The Thin Book of Trust, an essential primer for building trust at work, third edition. This is the first edition came out in 2009 and has sold well over 100,000 copies since then,
Nice.
and is in its third edition. And for the first time, it's going to be translated into a couple of different languages besides English. So,
Nice.
um,
Well done. Good job. Very cool. Well, Charles, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out to be on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And I will have all of these links down in the show notes. So listeners, make sure you check it out. I definitely recommend The Thin Book of Trust. If you work with other humans, chances are you're going to come into contact with people that may seem a little sketchy to you. Maybe you don't trust. Understanding why you don't through that framework, I think will be beneficial. But yeah, highly recommend. And share this episode with your family, friends, colleagues, and stick around because there's always more coming. That's it for me, Coach Harlan saying so long for now.